Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning. Happy Thursday, everybody. Apparently today is going to be a very sexy edition of Soccer Morning on the North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. That's Pony by Genuine. Selection of listener Chase, who is today's guest DJ. He's not physically here, but he did pick all of the music. It does get better from there. Not that I don't like Pony by Genuine. Back in the day, that song was great. Still great in its own retro kind of way. Just an interesting way to start off the program today. Maybe it's a sexy U.S. men's national team roster for Mexico. Maybe that's what this is. It a sexy roster? We're going to talk about the U.S. men's roster today. U.S. men's national team roster today. And we have Alexi Lalas joining us at 11 o'clock to go over that. No surprises. If sexy means surprises, then this is not a sexy roster because there are no surprises. In fact, if you want to talk snubs, and when I know we love to talk snubs, if you want to talk snubs, the only real snub that anybody can seem to come up with is Benny Feilhaber. And we knew that Benny had a long road back to Jurgen Klinsmann's plans based on where he's been, sort of in the national team wilderness for a while. So Benny not in this team. Luis Gil in this team, that's not a surprise. He's an up-and-coming young player. I think that's the spot. If you didn't have Luis Gil, you'd have Benny Feilhaber. But clearly, Jurgen Klinsmann has moved on from Benny with very little time ahead of the World Cup. Benny Feilhaber's chances fading fast, probably already gone. But outside of that, you look down this up and down this roster. We'll go over the whole thing. We'll take your phone calls today, 347-756-6276. First hour of the show completely open for you to get in with your roster thoughts. Your thoughts on anything that's happened in the last 24 hours in the world of soccer. Clearly, Liverpool back in the title. Well, they were in the title race. Beating Sunderland, no surprise. You want to talk about Josie? We can talk about Josie. Here's my thing about Josie Altidore. Because if you are on Twitter during a Sunderland match and Josie Altidore is playing, it's a difficult, awkward experience. I like Josie. I still think he's a damn good player. It hasn't worked out at Sunderland. He is at fault. The team's at fault. There's no service. It's difficult. It's frustrating. You saw a couple moments yesterday when Josie basically climbed up Martin Skirtle's back and was whistled for a foul and did one of these at the referee. One of those frustrated, get out of here with that call. Get out of here. But come on. Climbed up the dude's back. So clearly frustration for Josie Altidore. We're not talking about Josie right now. We're talking about a roster for USA Mexico. This is the last chance that these MLS and Liga MX players have to really make an impression before Jurgen Klinsmann goes and picks his final roster for the World Cup in Brazil. Let's go over the roster briefly. Bill Hamid, Sean Johnson, Nick Rimando. No surprises. Hamid and Johnson, the young goalkeepers that Klinsmann continually turns to. Right now, I think a lot of people, most people, all people, would have Bill Hamid above Sean Johnson in the young goalkeeper pecking order. And obviously, Nick Rimando is everybody's choice to go to Brazil as the third keeper. Defenders, DeMarcus Beasley, Matt Beasler, Brad Evans, Clarence Goodson, Omar Gonzalez, Michael Orozco, Michael Parkhurst, and DeAndre Yedlin. Now, here's, again, not a snub, a younger player for the future. Not as young as DeAndre Yedlin, but still a player for the future. Chris Kloot, not getting a look in this team. Now, is that because Klinsmann is higher on Yedlin than he is on Kloot? Is it because, by the way, Kloot's 24, so we're rapidly approaching not young anymore for Chris Kloot. Is it because he sees that left back spot as more solidified? And what way? I mean, does that mean Fabian Johnson is going to be moving to left back? Or he has more confidence in DeMarcus Beasley than he does in Brad Evans? I don't know. Very difficult to determine what's going on with those fullback spots for this team. So no Chris Kloot, but DeAndre Yedlin. So if you want to talk about young, up-and-coming players, fullbacks in this national team, there you go. You look at the central defenders in this team. Everybody expects Beasler and Gonzalez to be the choice pairing. But my friend Brian Sciaretta over at American Soccer Now did make a good point that, look, if one of those guys falters and both of them have questions, that could be to Clarence Goodson's benefit. He could be the guy. I mean, he's certainly way more experienced than either Beasler or Gonzalez. And if you want to rely on experience, he's the guy you'll turn to. In terms of what those guys do together, this game will be a big test. We'll have to see if they can kind of sort out the issues that they've had and bring a little bit of confidence back to U.S. men's national team fans as we look ahead. Because you're not exactly sure, are you? You're not sure about any of those spots. You have two actual central defenders that you can turn to, but is anybody supremely confident? Not so sure about that. Brad Evans looks to be the choice on the right, but DeAndre Yedlin coming up on his heels. Is this an actual audition for DeAndre Yedlin to jump over his club teammate for that right back spot? The kid has improved. He absolutely has. Yanks United on Twitter. Could it be simply because Clute has been dealing with a hamstring injury? That's very possible. That's very possible. That he could be left out for an injury, but we haven't necessarily seen him. We've seen him in the team, but I think everybody gets the sense, or we've seen him called up in January. We get the sense that it's DeAndre Yedlin is higher on the pecking order than Chris Clute. Midfielders: Kyle Beckerman, Michael Bradley, Brad Davis, Landon Donovan, Maurice Adu, Luis Gil, Graham Zusi. Zero surprises. Again, Luis Gil is the one that gets you excited from a youth standpoint. Lots to offer there. One for the future. Not going to be in this cycle, more than likely. Brad Davis is a guy, seems to be on the bubble, can make an impression. Kyle Beckerman, we know what he brings to the table. Michael Bradley's your stalwart in the middle. Maurice Adu, coming up fast, playing very well for the Philadelphia Union on his return to MLS. Is he a guy who can somehow break in to that very competitive central midfield pool? Seems unlikely at this late date, but good to see him getting a shot here. Your forwards: Clint Dempsey, Chris Wondolowski, Eddie Johnson, and Julian Green. Now, Julian Green stands out. He's the kid we've all been talking about for the past week. Got his paperwork done through FIFA, one-time switch complete, and now he is eligible to play against Mexico. Now, can't imagine him starting necessarily at 18, but he may get a chance to play in the second half, or, as we've seen, look, I've seen a couple people say it. We all do this. We all assume that Jurgen Klinsmann is with a friendly and the substitutions he has available to him, 6 substitutions, that he'll make some halftime changes. Give a guy 45 minutes, give another guy 45 minutes. But it never happens. The man likes his 60-minute subs. So I think what we're going to end up seeing is Julian Green on the left for 60 minutes. And the reason I say, look, that he'll be on the left. He's listed as a forward. Don't expect him to play forward in this team. The role is not built for him. The role is not built for a lot of people outside of Josie Altidore and maybe Terrence Boyd. The way that Klinsmann likes to play. He shifts to that 4-4-2 late in games sometimes. Maybe that's when you get Julian Green on the field. Maybe that's what happens in the 60th minute. The reason you say Julian Green on the left is that there's a video out there with Klinsmann talking about the opportunity for these players to impress and make a statement and show something ahead of the World Cup roster selection. And there's a whiteboard right behind him. And on that whiteboard, it's got Julian Green on the left. So I don't know. I don't know exactly if that means anything, but I find it fascinating that of all the shots they could have done with Jurgen Klinsmann talking about this roster, with all the places they could have set up, with all the backdrops available, they choose a backdrop that has a whiteboard that has players on it in specific spots. And I think it had Eddie Johnson and Chris Wondolowski at forward. Okay, no shock there. And it said Will. We're talking Will Bruin? Because I don't know. He's not in this roster. Well, what are we talking about there? But Julian Green was on the left. So does that mean he's going to play there? Not necessarily. But is that some kind of message? I am not going to put it past Jurgen Klinsmann to do that on purpose, to set up his shot, to say, hey guys, let's shoot here. Oh, look, let me just go ahead and get my whiteboard here so everybody can see what I've been working on in the attacking part of the field. Andy Nabel on Twitter. Serious question. Why is Brad Evans considered a lock to even go to Brazil? If that's the case, why does our fullback pool suck? Our fullback pool sucks because our fullback pool sucks. I don't know that there's an easy way to come to a conclusion there. On the right, you have injury and retirement, Steve Cherundolo. You have injury, Timmy Chandler. You have just a litany of MLS options who have yet to convince anybody. And for whatever reason, Jurgen Klinsmann, valuing soccer intelligence, valuing adaptability, valuing a player who is versatile, stuck Brad Evans there, and it's been that way. Now, again, we all want to see Jeff Cameron get there. We all want to see Jeff Cameron just because it would make us feel better. Is Jeff Cameron a better right back than Brad Evans? Yes, I think that's true. But even more than that, we want to feel comfortable that a guy who actually plays that position on a regular basis is the guy who's going to line up against Ghana in Brazil. That's the issue there. For our personal edification as fans, just give us a little bit more confidence that you're not going to stick a guy who doesn't play right back at right back. We want a guy who knows how to knows what he's doing, and the point being made, my man Jared Dubois on the Best Soccer Show made the point that Jeff Cameron goes up against quality wide players all the time. Now, is he one of the best right backs in England? No, probably not. But he's good enough to start for a team that, as of right now, is not relegation threatened, that is playing well enough to be middle half of the Premier League table. Has not been benched, gets regular minutes, has not had a terrible game that has ended up in some serious hand-wringing over his role in that team. Scored a goal in his last time out. All of that stuff kind of builds up to the notion that why is he not the first choice? Yeah, he may not have started his career there. Yeah, he may be more of a natural central defender or a natural defensive midfielder. But hey, this is what he's doing now. And a good player can adapt. And he has. He's adapted. But then again, if Brad Evans has adapted, you give him credit for that as well. That's what it is. Andy, we're all frightened by our fullbacks right now. Absolutely. And that's, again, on top of the fact that Beasler and Gonzalez have yet to really convince anybody that they're going to be able to handle that stage against that level of talent in Brazil. This may be the deepest U.S. soccer has ever been heading into a World Cup, but that doesn't mean that the top level talent in every spot is better than it's ever been. That's certainly not the case. The back line was more solid going into the 2010 World Cup than it is right now. So that's where we stand with all of these questions. And this game's going to do some to answer those questions, but not enough. Not really. If they go out and shut out Mexico and Beasler and Gonzalez play fantastic soccer, I suppose that'll make you feel a little bit better. That'll give you some confidence. They give up 1 or 2 goals, and there's a couple of miscommunications, or there's a slip, or Beasler gets beaten for speed, or whatever. Then it's all gonna bubble up again. And look, rightfully so. I'm not telling anybody to feel that you have to feel good about this team right now. A lot can happen between now and the first game in June. All right. Alexi Lawless at 11 o'clock to talk through those roster issues. We're certainly talking about Julian Green, because he's the kid that everybody's going to have their eye on. Is he going to do enough, or does he really have a legitimate chance to make the World Cup roster? Because that's what everybody was talking about when it was announced that he was switching, that he had decided to play for the United States of America, that this was the deal. Roster spot for allegiance. Chance to go to Brazil at the age of 18, see a World Cup, maybe play in a World Cup. For your allegiance. It's short-term gain, whatever. We'll see if Klinsmann is giving him an opportunity to compete, or if he's legitimately giving him a shot, or legitimately putting him into this team already. Because you look at the options out there. Fabian Johnson is a left mid. That means DeMarcus Beasley is playing left back. We've obviously got our issues there. Although there are other options in the pool who are not in the picture yet. So you can kind of, like, if you want to talk about Michael Orozco's in this team, you want to talk about Castillo, not in this team with Tijuana, obviously not available because of CCL. Would he be in this team? Would he be starting? Greg Garza, a player who has yet to get a shot for the senior national team, playing very well for Tijuana. Is he a guy who, it's too late? Is it too late? Must be too late, right? Can't possibly. So let's not even go over guys who haven't even been in the team. Let's not even do that. Joe on Twitter, Benny Feilhaber deserves to be in the national team in Brazil, not only for his language and his cultural skills. Yeah, I mean, look, how rough is that going to be on Benny if the guy doesn't get to go to a World Cup in his native country? I mean, this isn't like going to your hometown and I've got, 50 tickets I need to get for my friends and family. It's not quite like that. This is the World Cup. But it's got to suck a little bit to sort of be just on the edge of that picture. And I know that a player like Benny Feilhaber gets people worked up because there aren't a lot of players in the pool who are capable of some of the things that Benny Feilhaber can do. The kind of passes that Benny Feilhaber can play. The type of ability to create space and find a shot. Is that something that the United States is going to need in Brazil? Somebody willing to take the shot. And I mean outside of Clint Dempsey. And the other element of this roster, as we look at it, something we'll be focusing on and something I will certainly ask Alexi about, is you have Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, and Michael Bradley all in the same team, likely to start for what I believe is only the 5th time under Jurgen Klinsmann. 5th time total under Jurgen Klinsmann. That's it. Those 3 guys have only played together under this coach 4 times previous to this game. If they make a start, or if they all make a start, and why wouldn't they? And you figure those are the guys. Those are the guys who make you go in Brazil. That's the core of this team. So let's see them together. Let's see that. Roster thoughts, 347-756-6276. Twitter, @SoccerMorning. Do all of that. We can certainly talk about other happenings. La Liga. Somebody just dropped a chaos bomb on La Liga yesterday. Madrid losing to Sevilla. They've lost 2 straight. Now, one of them was El Clasico against Barcelona, 4-3. Now, that was rough because that was at home for Madrid. But they've lost 2 straight after going 31 unbeaten. And now you look at the standings in Spain. And you've got 3 points separating those 3 teams: Atleti, Barcelona, Real Madrid. Atletico on top, 73 points. Barcelona right there, 72. And Real Madrid, having taken that hit and dropped those points, if you want to say it that way, because, look, I know Sevilla's in 5th. I mean, let's not act like this is a bad soccer team they lost to. But when every point counts because you've got a three-way race for the title, this could really, really, really be a problem for Real Madrid. Meanwhile, Barcelona wins, but loses Victor Valdez to an ACL injury. That's going to affect them. It's going to affect Spain. Certainly, we're talking about. What does that do? What does that do for their chances? Does it hurt them? Don't know. Liverpool beat Sunderland yesterday. I mentioned Josie Altidore's play in that game. Let me do it this way. Let's ask this as a poll question, because I'd be curious, and I'll admit to my bias. Okay, I fully admit that when it comes to Josie Altidore, it's hard for me to separate out my American loyalties. And again, maybe I'm being too kind. But if I put it to you, are Josie Altidore's struggles more about his play, him individually as a player, what he is doing on the field, or Sunderland's inability to play effective soccer, for lack of a better way of saying it. For their inability to play the ball through midfield, their inability to get the ball to their strikers in any way that could possibly lead to a goal. Now, that's hyperbole a little bit. They've scored some goals. Connor Wickham was on the field. Did he do more than Josie yesterday? Was he more active? Did he hold the ball up better? Did he make better decisions? All of that. I'm curious. Where do you, if you had to pick one, I think the blame is shared. I think that's the right way to look at it. But if you had to pick one, is it on the situation at Sunderland or is it on Josie Altidore? I'd be curious. At Soccer Morning on Twitter. Quick Twitter poll. The first 10 votes, we'll figure it out. Oh, look, there's a troll account in our Twitter feed. Oh, fun times. Fun times. Yeah, not going to deal with you. Definitely not dealing with the troll account. Trinity DCU. Jason, who's your starting 11 as of right now before the first game in the World Cup? It's difficult to say. A difficult question. We'll go through that. 313, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason. It's Isaac from Pittsburgh.
What's up, Isaac from Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so in answering your question about Josie's struggles, well, I'm just saying, like, I watched the Sunderland game yesterday, and I saw, that Josie has a good head on his, right above his shoulders, because he was getting in good, positions. I saw, he was in some good positions to get a rebound or two. He almost set up the Sung Young Ki's first chance, and he almost got the rebound if he needed to on the Sung Young Ki's goal. But what I'm seeing, I'm sorry, go on.
I didn't say anything. Go ahead, Isaac.
All right. What I'm seeing is he's missing that striker selfishness, where it's okay, guys. I got this. I know how to put this in the back of the net. I think he may have lost that confidence. And, he's instead trying to either set up his teammates or, like I said, get that rebound. Mm-hmm. But, maybe with the track record that our strikers have at the World Cup, maybe it's not such a bad thing that he's looking to set up the people catching up behind him.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I think that you're right. I think confidence has to be at a low point. When you are struggling to even see the ball, and when you do, occasionally it's a bad touch. I mean, there's a rhythm to these things. And when he's not getting into a rhythm, I can imagine it's difficult. I don't think that excuses him completely, but I do think it's something to consider. And you watch him, and sometimes, look, he was criticized for not taking a shot yesterday. That would have been an insanely stupid shot. So, yeah. There is something to be said of piling on because it's not going well, because he's not playing well, because he's not scoring goals. It's easy for everyone, and commentators included, to pile on when there's a little bit of bias happening there. And if we pull it back a little bit and take a look at the big picture, again, I think it's a combination of factors. But I'm asking you, if you had to pick one or the other, is it on the team or is it on Josie? Which way would you pick?
The team, but barely.
The team, barely. All right, fair enough. Yeah, 51-50. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is it 51-49? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, 51-49. Hey, listen, I also want to say on the roster, it's kind of adding insult to injury on LA Galaxy's loss to Tijuana, because we already pretty much know what Omar Gonzalez and Landon Donovan bring to the U.S. men's national team. This would have been a great opportunity to see Greg Garza and Joe Corona show their stuff. Remind us. Well, I think Joe Corona's remind us what they can contribute. Greg, he's only 22, but right. he was a beast from what I saw in the CONCACAF Championship.
He was. I mean, I do think it's kind of a catch-22. You want to see those guys because I think they deserve it. And yeah, the scheduling sucks, and they've got to play in the Champions League, so they're not available. But at the same time, I'm not sure that there was ever really any legitimate chance of Corona or Garza going to Brazil. Definitely not Garza. I think it was very questionable whether Corona had a legitimate shot at this point. And I'm not saying that's fair. I'm just saying that looking at the picture and looking at what Klinsmann has done, there's very little reason to think that Corona had a chance. So it's almost like you would be giving up a spot in this roster to a guy with no shot at Brazil if you did include him, if he was available. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Corona's one for the future.
I'm sorry.
Corona's one for the future, Isaac. That's essentially what I'm saying.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, but thanks for taking my call.
No problem. Thanks for the call, Isaac. Appreciate it. Getting some responses to this question. Is it on Josie? Is it on Sunderland? Nick says it's a combination of both. I asked you to pick one, Nick. Follow directions. It's a combination of both. I think the Premier League has better defenders, and Sunderland is Sunderland. Okay. Kenzie Mbeta gang. Sunderland doesn't fit Josie. Still think it was a huge mistake to transfer there. I think everybody has come around to that belief, even if you didn't have it when he signed. Trini DCU, both Josie needs confidence. Same thing happened after he left Hull. Chris Allen, definitely Sunderland cannot play the ball into the final third. And James, if I have to pick one, it's Poyet. Okay, no striker is effective in a system. If someone else was scoring a lot, then it's on Josie. I mean, I think that's something to consider too. It's not like Sunderland is getting great production out of Fletcher or any of these other guys. Barini scoring some goals. I think I don't know. It's so tough because, again, just based on the fact that I'm American, if I want to talk about Josie, if I want to try to get at a fair assessment of his situation, it sounds like I'm trending too far and it's not his fault. I do think some of it is his fault. He's a player. He has the power to affect some of those things. But I think he's working hard. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And for that's the part that pisses me off on Twitter. You get those comments. Somebody sent me the joke, Josie ought to do more instead of Josie out the door. Really? Did you see that game? I know it's Liverpool. I know they're one of the top teams in the league, but did you see that game? I don't know. It's difficult. Very, very difficult. All right, I was asked for my starting 11 for Brazil. Put one together. This is off the top of my head what my gut says will happen. Tim Howard, Jeff Cameron, Omar Gonzalez, Matt Beasler, Fabian Johnson, Michael Bradley, Jermaine Jones. I'm going with Alejandro Bedoya. Clint Dempsey in the middle, Landon Donovan on the left, and Josie Altidore up top. Until I see some change on Klinsmann's part and how he's going to set up his team, I don't know how you get Josie Altidore out of that lineup. I know everybody wants to see Aaron Johansson get a chance to start because he's scoring goals. I just don't know how you get him into this lineup unless you're going to sit Dempsey for him. And even then, that's not a great fit. Not a great fit at all. And essentially what you'd end up having is a 4-4-2 with a big hole in the middle. So we'll see what happens there. All right. We can take more calls, 347-756-6276 on the roster. On who's look, again, this isn't about who's missing. There are no surprises here. We are a couple of months out of Brazil, from Brazil. This can't be an experimental roster. Just can't be. But if we're going to talk about guys we might want to see after the World Cup into the next cycle, yeah, we can do that. That's fine. The World Cup is this summer. We're all going to be focused on it. Never hurts to talk about the future. But if you're going to come to me and say, and Isaac has legitimate reason to bring up Joe Corona and Greg Garza, but those guys they were always on the outside looking in, and they weren't going to have a legitimate shot in reality of making it into this team. Who would you kick out of the roster to get Joe Corona in? Jose Francisco Torres has gotten a little bit of heat recently, playing fairly well in Mexico. But he doesn't seem to fit Klinsmann's system, hasn't really gotten a strong look at this level, at the top level for the national team. So it's difficult. There's lots of reasons to be excited about these players, but you look at the roster as constructed, and remember, it's not just the top 23 players. It's not a ranking. Who are the top 23 players in the U.S. national team pool? That's our team for Brazil. It doesn't work that way. Not just because of position, but because do they make up the best team possible? That's what Jurgen Klinsmann's getting paid $2.5 million to do, outside of, talk a lot and style stuff and all of that. Getting paid $2.5 million to figure out a way to make this team an effective team based on the parts. based on the parts available. They may be imperfect parts. They may even be mismatched parts. They may not fit where they're supposed to go. Brad Evans, that's you're sticking a square peg into a round hole. You're hitting it with a hammer to jam it in there, and it may be somewhat effective, but that's what you're doing. So we're going to be judging Klinsmann post-World Cup exit on how well he did figuring out how to make an effective team out of these parts. Did he do that? Now, so far, based on the results from the Hex, it's kind of hard to say that he didn't figure it out, that he didn't do a good job. Now, situations change, and the World Cup is not the Hex. And you can get away with Brad Evans against Panama. You may not be able to get or Jamaica, but you're not going to be able to get away with Brad Evans at right back against Ghana, Portugal, Germany. So this situation has changed. Is he going to adapt for that? Is he going to change? You want to give me your starting lineup for Brazil? Always a fun exercise. Pick mine apart. Again, Tim Howard, Jeff Cameron, Omar Gonzalez, Matt Beasler, Fabian Johnson, Michael Bradley, Jermaine Jones, Alejandro Bedoya, Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, and Josie Altidore. You're a big Zusi guy? Throw Zusi in the mix. Bedoya out, Zusi in. Is that still your team? You're really concerned about Josie's inability to score in England? Fine. Give me your option here. Tell me who's starting there. Is Fabian Johnson the best option on the left side of midfield instead of Landon Donovan? In that case, what do? DeMarcus Beasley starts at left back? Are you more confident DeMarcus Beasley behind Fabian Johnson than you are Fabian Johnson behind Landon Donovan? Now, Landon Donovan isn't going to be a wide player, classically speaking. But you know what he brings. I want him on the field. I want Landon Donovan on the field. Is anybody out there of the legitimate opinion, that Landon Donovan is not a starter for the national team in Brazil? He spent his time in the wilderness last year. He came back. He played well at the Gold Cup. We saw him work his way back into the team. He was obviously key against Mexico and Columbus. I mean, is there any reason to think that he's not that guy anymore? Do you want him on the bench for some reason? Are you going to rationalize that? Lots of questions to be considered here. Not all of them good. But there are lots of questions. All right. I'm going to check my calendar here real quick. It appears to be March 27th. If I'm wrong, then my computer's wrong. It's March 27th, 2014. And I just want to tell you, I want to relate a story that I saw this morning, bouncing around on Twitter. This is actually dated for tomorrow, March 28th, by Michael King from the Austin Chronicle. All aboard the soccer train with an exclamation point is the headline. The subhead, Major League Soccer and Urban Rail take Austin by storm. Here's your lead. From an embargoed press release dated April 1st, the Chronicle has learned that the city of Austin is about to announce the construction of a new soccer stadium in the middle of the Colorado River, a project which will also provide the missing link in a new urban rail line serving the entire Central Texas area. The train will cross the river between Congress Avenue and I-35, stopping mid-river at a new landfill constructed and designed Fantasy Island, modeled after a similar project in Kazan City, Russia, and another in Qatar. The stadium, seating 20,000 for soccer, and perhaps far more for NCAA basketball or special indoor events like rock/country/ballet mega concerts, will be accessible by rail, boat, the new canoe kayak facility at the mouth of the Waller Creek, helicopter, jet ski, or zip line. And as a conceptually envisioned, monorail. All right. I'm just going to give you guys a second to process all of that. Think about it for a second. Remember what you just heard. It's just a very in-depth piece. Goes into a lot of detail here. Many details remain to be worked out, including the cost of a construction, estimated to be north of $1 billion, higher if portions of the train route are underwater, intentionally or otherwise. Design details also remain in progress. While the stadium is intended to include several dozen luxury boxes for corporate sponsors and their guests, state officials and legislators are rumored to be lobbying for additional luxury areas for their families and patrons. Planners expect to limit construction expenses by designing the general admission area as concrete covered in used AstroTurf, presuming the GA ticket holders will be delighted just to be allowed in the stadium and won't need actual seats. Are you getting it yet? Following along? Should I go back to the top? Let me go back to the top. Read the first line again. From an embargoed press release dated April 1st, the Chronicle has learned that the city of Austin is about to announce the construction of a new soccer stadium in the middle of the Colorado River. There you go. It took me a minute. I'll admit it took me a minute. It did. And I had a pretty visceral reaction to the notion of putting this out there early. A couple of days early. Ahead of April 1st. But apparently this is a weekly magazine or weekly newspaper, in Austin. And in order to get this into the print edition in time for April 1st, they went ahead and ran it. I get it. It's amazing. The soccer train. If you're not following, do I have to spell it out? Is anybody lost? Is anybody still lost? Anybody? Ian Young on Twitter. When do season seats go on sale? I'm ziplining to all the games, or maybe kayak. Man, how fun would it be to kayak to a game? Guys, we're kayaking to the stadium. Is that kayak where you do the ziplining in? How do you zipline in and then get out? Like, you can't zipline out. That's not how gravity works. As far as I can tell. These guys went so far as to create a couple of renderings, which are pretty fascinating, which are pretty funny. Gotta love these renderings. These are great. This is fun. Now, look, I know Austin has gotten legitimate heat as a potential MLS expansion city. And I think they've got a good base of reasoning for them to be considered. There's a lot going for Austin as a potential big-time soccer market. We know the history. If you don't know the history, they had the Austin Aztecs in the old USL 1. Mr. Phil Rollins was involved in that. He decided that greener pastures existed in Central Florida, picked that team up, moved them to Orlando. Next thing you know, Orlando City is getting an MLS franchise. Meanwhile, Austin left to pick up the pieces, restarted the Aztecs as a PDL team, I believe, and are trying to get back in the game. Feel for all those people in Austin. It was rough. It was a rough go of it when Phil picked up and left. So yes, while this is ridiculous and clearly an April Fool's joke, it'll be nice to see some actual talk about putting a stadium in Austin and perhaps bringing MLS to that town. I know a lot of Texans. They all say that Austin would be great for this. Now, with San Antonio also on that list, and you already have 2 Texas teams, how many Texas teams can we have? How many Texas teams is too many? You have a Texas mini league. Would the Texas mini league be better than the Cascadia Cup? I put that to you. The Cascadia Cup, which got more coverage in depth in a long form piece at SB Nation that I read the other day. Let me see if I can pull this up because I didn't have it in front of me. I didn't intend to talk about it in depth here, but long form piece about the Cascadia rivalry. The pig war is the way it's being described, which is apparently the pig war was something that happened in that region of the country years and years ago. This is a in-depth reported piece by Matt Negrin at SB Nation Longform. Burn, destroy, wreck, kill. Soccer's pig war produces spies and battle cries in the Pacific Northwest. Now, look, you might think if you're not a Cascadia resident, if you're not from Portland or Seattle, maybe even if you're from Vancouver, you may think, oh, we've done this already. We need more coverage. We need more coverage of Portland and Seattle and their rivalry, do we? there are some interesting elements to this. There's a story about one of the founders of VCS and something about a notebook that gets destroyed. Some interesting anecdotes in there. I'm not going to hold this up as some amazing piece of journalism. It's a good look. Talking about spies and secret Seattle bars in Portland and secret, I don't know. Treating, using that Army analogy, extending it out. All of the things that the Portland fans do and the Seattle fans do, we hate this and we hate that, and the relationship between the sound wave and ECS. It's fascinating. It is. It's fascinating. But perhaps it's a little too, I don't know. I don't want to say if it's navel gazing, because it's not if it's written by someone who's not necessarily in the community day in and day out. And apparently this individual, Matt Negrin, good writer, I guess. I'm not aware of his work previously, but apparently he's a politics guy. His general area of expertise is politics. Here's his bio at SB Nation. Matt Negrin has never written about sports, but he's written about politics. There you go. So from that perspective, it's interesting to see what an outsider thinks as he goes about getting the ins and outs of the back and forth, the war between Timbers fans and Sounders fans. And then there's the comments, the obligatory comments that say stuff like, these people would lose their blank if they were actually at a real derby in Europe. Okay, I have a lot of issues with that. You're comparing apples and oranges, first of all. They're not equatable, fine. What do you expect these people to do? Look, I'm not one for faking hooliganism. I'm not one for play acting and cosplay when it comes to soccer. If you want to go out and support your team and be rowdy about it, be rowdy about it. Don't start fights because you think that's what supporters do. Don't make it something it doesn't need to be. But if they want to go out and, I don't know, pretend to be ultras in the European sense, no problem with that. Without those negative elements that don't need to be part of American sports and don't need to be part of American soccer. That's fine. So when somebody arrives in the comments after reading this extremely long piece about a rivalry that exists in American sports, American soccer, the type of rivalry we just don't have very often, and immediately wants to chop it down by saying it's not what we have in Europe. It's not what, it's not really. Well, that's a good thing in my mind. That's great. Wait, you mean these people aren't starting riots and they're not attacking people in bars and they're not holding up politically charged banners and being far right? Or you mean that's not happening here? Yay! Woo! I'm excited. It's good stuff. It means we can hate each other within the sports context and make sure it's not going to bleed over to anything where somebody gets hurt. Some unnecessary nonsense. All right. Let's take a quick break. I got to make sure I get all of Chase's music in. I completely forgot about that. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Remember, we got Alexi Lawless at 11 o'clock. It's Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Getting some World Cup lineup chat. We'll do that as well. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
I want to be as free as the spirits of those who left. I'm talking Malcolm, Coltrane, my man Yusef.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, talking U.S. national team roster, talking starting 11 for the World Cup in Brazil against Ghana. That first game. Give me your thoughts on that. Give me your thoughts on this roster. Tell me who's missing. David Conrad talking about, I don't know, what are you talking about, David? And produced Mane. Oh, talking about Austin. Yeah. Kukuta Mane, Tierpak, and obviously Paul Dalglish, who Kenny Dalglish's son, previously of the Dynamo and was head coach of the Austin Aztecs in the PDL before moving on to coach at RSL, to be an assistant RSL. So just to give the full Austin picture, thank you, David. Dylan Powers and Blake Smith, he says. All right. As to your starting 11 for the U.S. men's national team, Anders, I'd take Bedoya, but start Zusi over him. With Donovan Nero on the left, we need width on the other side. Zusi will do that. It's a good point. Got to have somebody providing some width. And certainly what we've seen from Klinsmann and why you've seen DeMarcus Beasley at left back is because if you play a left midfielder who's going to be narrow, you get your width by pushing DeMarcus Beasley up on overlapping runs. You don't get that same sort of attacking initiative from Brad Evans. And I imagine if Jeff Cameron started there, you wouldn't want the same kind of attacking initiative from Jeff Cameron, and it wouldn't come in overlapping runs anyway. Although speaking of Jeff Cameron and that goal he scored for Stoke in their win over Villa this weekend. Watch where he ends up. Now, they were up 3-1 at the time. So he had the freedom because of that scoreline to kind of go wandering. You watch him make a pass into midfield, approach the halfway line with the ball, make a pass into midfield, sort of wander his way through the attacking third midfield and travel all the way across to the left side of the box to be there for the cutback and the goal. Total football. Fun times, though, for Jeff Cameron, who's playing very well at Stoke. And again, I think that would provide the most confidence. That's a good question for national team fans. Who gives you the most confidence in each of those spots? At right back, Jeff Cameron. At left back, Fabian Johnson. In the middle, still Beasler, still Gonzalez. Still? Or do you have somebody else? Do you have somebody else stepping up in those spots? Would you rather have Clarence Goodson? Clarence Goodson doesn't get anybody's blood pumping, but he's solid. He's solid. He's going to be, he's a little slow, but he's big, and he'll win the ball in the air, and he'll play physical. He'll be relatively consistent in positioning and understanding where to be. Those are things to consider when you think about this. All right, 10 minutes till Alexi joins us. We'll talk through all of those things in depth with Mr. Lawless. In the meantime, in additional stadium news, while Austin's 20,000-seat stadium on an island in the middle of the Colorado River is not true, and there is no zip line planned, unfortunately, and no kayak landing, Roma is planning a stadium. If you haven't seen these plans, they are pretty stunning. Now, again, my position on renderings. Renderings always look great. Renderings are fantastic. Renderings give you the illusion that the stadium is going to be as perfect as possible. Sometimes they do end up being perfect. But it's also a matter of a long way to go before that is an actual building that Roma actually plays in. It's great. Obviously, there's an American interest behind that team. That's getting a lot of press in the American media. The New York Times doing pieces on that. In fact, I saw something that was talking about Daniele De Rossi, saying he would have loved to have come and played in MLS towards the end of his career, but now that there's all of these plans at Roma, he wants to stick it out to see the new building, to play in the new building. And that's because of an American. So it's an American's fault that we're not going to get Daniele De Rossi in MLS. I don't know. Be upset about that. But the renderings are fantastic. They're beautiful. they do seem, the style, I'm trying to pin down the style. Looking at it, it's got that wall. It's Coliseum inspired. I get that. But it doesn't really resemble the Coliseum very much. Instead, you kind of get this weird 60s mod interior decorating kind of vibe. My friend Richard Whittle from The Score up in Canada said it looks like something from the set of Planet of the Apes. And I said it looks like something that Bond, and in this case Connery Bond, would have to infiltrate to stop a plot against the world by the evil organization, by Spectre. Spectre is going to set up shop in the Stadio della Roma. That's going to be where they're going to be. That's their new headquarters. It looks like that. It looks like their new headquarters. Again, it's that wall that's like odd shapes and I don't know. Very strange stuff. But good times at Roma. If you're a Roma fan, it's exciting to see that club making steps forward. If you know anything about Serie A, even if you're a casual fan, you know that stadiums have been part of that league's problem. The big clubs in Italy have had trouble keeping up with the rest of Europe, partly because of their stadium situations. So Juventus is in their own building. They've got a brand new stadium. Roma's taking that step now. It'll be interesting to watch them get that together. In other news, did you hear that Nigel Reo-Coker is going to miss this weekend's game against Houston because he tripped over a bike rack? Damn, bike racks. It's funny when we see athletes hurt themselves in these very prosaic situations. Who was it that cut themselves? It was a Vancouver Whitecap. Cut themselves and was out for a while. I want to say it was Darren Maddox. Is that right? Did Darren Maddox cut himself or burn himself? He burned himself cooking, right? I think that's what it was. Darren Maddox burned himself cooking and was unavailable for a little while. It was either last year or the year before that. So now you got Nigel Reo-Coker tripping over a bike rack. And on the list of hilarious injuries, and let's not laugh at Nigel's pain, but come on. On the list of hilarious injuries, it's not really that high. Tripping over a bike rack. Okay. Funny, not that funny. Remember Darius Vassell? Had a blood blister on his toe, under his nail. So he took a Black & Decker drill and drilled it out and then got a blood infection and had to have the whole nail removed. I saw this one. Dave Beesant, who was at Chelsea in the early 90s, was in his kitchen making some food, had a jar of something, dropped it. And I've had this instinct too. When you drop something in the kitchen, you don't want it to shatter all over the floor, right? It's glass. You don't want it to shatter. So what do? You stick your foot out to try to break the fall. Well, if it's heavy enough, break your foot. Sure enough, broke his foot. Out. Injured. Can't play. Man, what a way to go. Bill Reese on Twitter. Frank Rost got hurt sitting on a plane coming back from the Emirates Cup for the Red Bulls in 2011. I didn't remember that one. Frank Rost, the German keeper that the Red Bulls had for a little while. Wasn't he a DP? Frank Rost? Yeah. How did he get hurt sitting on a plane? Was that one of those, like, his legs had some kind of blood clotting issue or something? Or did he strain something, perhaps? Sitting in the wrong position? Man, that's rough. And again, here I am laughing at these guys. I've probably injured myself in much stupider ways. Much, much stupider ways. But then again, I'm not a professional athlete. I don't play soccer for a living. Here's a good one. This one's not a home accident or something outside of it was on a field, but I don't know where we put it in the hierarchy. Steve Morrow, former FC Dallas coach, guy who's scouting in America, Arsenal player. after a win over Sheffield Wednesday in the League Cup in '93, Tony Adams put Steve Morrow on his shoulders, but slipped. Morrow crashed awkwardly to the ground, breaking his collarbone. That one's pretty good. When a teammate helps you get injured in a post-game celebration accident. And I'm always actually amazed that there aren't more post-game celebration accidents that lead to people getting hurt. There's flying champagne corks. People are throwing stuff all over the place. Champagne bottles are heavy, man. If I'm in the locker room, I'm celebrating. We just won MLS Cup or whatever, the League Cup, the FA Cup, the blah, blah, blah Cup. And I have a champagne bottle and I'm down, pouring it on my head. And I throw my arms out in celebration and somebody's standing behind me. You really hurt somebody. Straight in the eye. Out for 6 weeks. Well, if you just won the cup, maybe you don't have a lot of games to play. Maybe you do. Maybe you missed the World Cup because of a post-celebration injury. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to miss the World Cup, period. Like Victor Valdez is probably going to miss the World Cup. Absolutely not. All right, here we go. A couple of minutes left until we talk to Alexi Lawless about this U.S. national team roster. What to look forward to next week when the U.S. takes on Mexico in Phoenix. What is Jurgen Klinsmann trying to get done here? This is clearly not his best team, but it's got elements of his best team, and it's got elements of the team he's going to take with him to Brazil. There's got to be something he's looking for. How much Julian Green do we see? Serious question. How much Julian Green do you want to see? Remember, there is limited time to get everything in order before they head to Brazil. Yeah, you get the send-off series, but you need to take every opportunity to see as much actual improvement as possible. Does Julian Green help that process? Does he get 45 minutes? Does he get half an hour? 10 minutes at the end of the game? It's a one-time switch. He's already locked in. Don't have to worry about cap signing. Maybe the experience is enough. He's the one European player on this roster. Tells you how much Jurgen Klinsmann is chasing the kid. All right, here we go. When we come back, Alexi Lawless, ESPN, will join us. We'll talk about this roster, this game. Have a little fun with that. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Stay there.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now on the telephone by Alexi Lawless, ESPN soccer analyst, former U.S. men's national team, great MLSer, played in Italy. Alexi, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. Good morning to you and your listener.
I feel like I short you on your resume sometimes. Like, we just say Alexi Lawless, and yeah, you don't really need an introduction past that. But, there's a lot of good things in your Michigan Sports Hall of Fame member, right?
Yeah. There's no accounting for bad taste, but I'll take it. I mean, just general awesomeness pretty much covers it.
Okay, sure enough. And follow Alexi on Twitter for all of that general awesomeness at Alexi Lawless. All right, so we've got a roster for a U.S.-Mexico game, which apparently we have to do, every 3 months or so. Is that the deal?
Got to pay the bills. Got to pay the bills.
Got to pay the bills. Got to fill up that building with all of those Mexico fans who will buy tickets. And Jurgen Klinsmann selected a roster that I don't think has any surprises on it, Alexi. The only thing I think people are kind of pointing to is that maybe Benny Feilhaber, quote-unquote, deserved a look, and you can give me your opinion on whether or not he deserved a look. And then, obviously, Julian Green is the name that kind of sticks out because he's new, because he's young, because he's from Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I think we all poured over this roster when it came out yesterday, trying to find that person that either was there or wasn't there that would give us plenty to talk about. And there wasn't a lot, to be quite honest with you. We're going to focus on Julian Green, as we should. I mean, that story is amazing, and this will be, for a lot of people, their first chance to get to see him play, but more importantly, to get to see him play within this U.S. national team and all the stories that come out of that. Benny Feilhaber, I just don't think that he was in the plans anyway, so that's not that big a surprise. Obviously, he's playing well right now MLS-wise, but I think when Jurgen really looked at it, he has other players that he feels more comfortable with. Benny's part of this generation that we've raised, that we identified early with incredible skill, but doesn't necessarily play a true position. And in comparison to other players, it's just, I think Jurgen felt that he's got better available to him. And in a sense, that I think that's a good thing, because the U.S. is now in a position where good players, and Benny is a good player, aren't necessarily making the team. And some good players aren't going to be on the team and are going to be left back. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But this game, as you said, it's about money on the surface, but there are other things to look at, especially being so close to the World Cup for both teams.
Is this game, look, you got Donovan, Bradley, Dempsey, all on the team, all likely to start. It hasn't happened as many times as I'm sure Klinsmann would have liked during his tenure. So that's something to focus on. But is this game probably even more important defensively and certainly in terms of Beasler and Gonzalez continuing to develop whatever partnership they can before they head to Brazil?
Yeah, for those guys, it's huge. You got to get them as many reps as possible. I mean, we look at them now as the first guys on the sheet in terms of that tandem, but they're gonna step on that field this summer and be very inexperienced and be very young. And so the more reps that you can get in big games against good quality opponents, the better off you're going to be. So that's important. The other part is, if Jurgen's going to continue with Beasley on the left and Evans on the right, got to get them reps. So if that's a foursome that he sees as a real heavy possibility of starting, then they got to start this weekend or next week, and you got to go with that foursome to give them yet another rep against a good opponent. But the talk about who's going to actually play right back, and with Jeff Cameron playing consistently and playing well over in England. And then obviously Brad Evans not even playing that position, but now Yedlin comes into the camp, and all of these different stories over there. And then, are you comfortable going into a World Cup with a guy like DeMarcus Beasley playing at that left back position when you do have a guy like Fabian Johnson who can pull back in that position? So a lot of questions there on the back, but whoever that back four is, if it's that consistency that they've had in the past, then go with it again and get him another rep, another 80 minutes against Mexico.
You talk about Fabian Johnson and whether or not he plays left back. I'm still lost as to how Klinsmann gets Landon Donovan on the field as a starter if he doesn't have Fabian Johnson play left back. And for me, Landon Donovan should be a starter. How else does he do it?
Well, this is the problem. Well, not the problem. Once again, I think this is a good problem to have, but this is what people are going to have to decide at some point. If, let's say, Fabian Johnson doesn't pull back into the back line, then that music's going to stop against Ghana, and somebody's not going to have a chair. And a very good player, one of either Zuzi, Landon, Clint,
Bedoya.
Fabian Johnson, Bedoya, are for 3 spots, because Michael Bradley and Jermaine are going to be behind them. We all know that. And then those guys are going to have to figure out where they all fit in. So some very, very good players are going to go on the bench, and I guess that's a sign of progress. And it's nice to have them in your belt if things don't go wrong. If you want to put in a spark, if you're putting in a Zuzi or something like that. But I think there's going to be a wide array of predictions and preferences when it comes to who of those 5 guys fit those 3 spots. Now, if he does pull back and play in the back, then that takes one of those players out of the equation. But then, once again, a guy like Brad Evans, who's now played consistently, pulls out. A guy like Jeff Hammond, who a lot of people feel should be at the right back position. If he goes and plays, if Fabian Johnson plays right back, then that's taken out. If he goes to the left back, now DeMarcus Beasley, with all his experience and his ability, is taken out. So a lot of questions for Jurgen Klinsmann. Good questions to have, but that's why he's been paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I said that this is the reason he's getting $2.5 million or whatever his salary is to figure out how to make the most effective team out of the imperfect parts that he has. I mean, there's some very good players in this group, obviously, but he's got some holes that he has to fill. And I guess I should pull back and say, I suppose Donovan can play on the right. I mean, he certainly can play on the right. Whether he does and whether that's at Zuzi's expense or Bedoya's, again, lots of questions to be asked and hopefully answered.
And up top. I mean, the Josie Altidore situation right now, I know has produced a lot of consternation in the American soccer community, but I question when everyone says this. Well, who's left? I mean, Josie Altidore is unique in that he is the only one that can play that position tactically in what Jurgen Klinsmann wants with that one guy up top. There's just nobody else, and that's good for Josie. But obviously, when he's not playing well and people are screaming and yelling to say, he's not scoring goals, he's not playing well over in England. Well, what's your alternative? Who do you want up there?
I'm with you, that's my first instinct. Anytime somebody says, "Well, Josie shouldn't start," I'm like, "Well, who's going to?" Because I don't foresee Jurgen Klinsmann playing a false 9 with Donovan or Dempsey or Aaron Johansson. I mean, it's just not going.
No, and he switches to 2 up top later on in the game, and that's been his MO, and it's worked well. To be fair to him, this formation with Josie up there is important. And for me, the goal scoring from Josie is secondary. I just want him to hold the ball. And this summer, with the quality that the U.S. is playing against, there are going to be times where you're going to need a guy up there that's going to have to hold that ball, relieve that pressure, provide that outlet on a consistent basis. I could care less whether Josie scores goals. What I do care about is when the U.S. needs to break pressure and get out of their own end, either they're being high pressured or they're actually having some of the ball, and they need to have that moment where it goes in up top and somebody holds it, draws pressure, and then kicks it out. He's going to have to do that. And if he does that, then he will be worth it in my mind, regardless of what the goals he does or doesn't score.
Absolutely. I don't think it's wrong to say that in this setup, the way that Klinsmann plays, Josie Altidore goal scorer is secondary to Josie Altidore center forward. And he's also capable of occupying defenders, which is what you need if you're going to get goals from Dempsey and Donovan and Bedoya or whoever else is on the field.
Absolutely. What do you think of Julian Green? What's your verdict? What do you think? What's going to happen?
I said this earlier. I don't know if you've seen this video, Alexi, but there's a video that came out in the aftermath of the roster in which Klinsmann is sort of talking about these guys and what they have to do and the last chance to impress ahead of the send-off series and picking the team and everything, ahead of the 30-man roster, certainly. And behind him is a whiteboard, and on it's got Julian Green's name on the left side of midfield. Now, I don't know if that means anything, but I also wouldn't put it past Klinsmann to sort of be calculating in these little hints. I mean, he could do that video anywhere, and he does it right there in front of that instead of that in front of that whiteboard. Really, I don't know, but I think we're going to see him. I just don't know how long. I mean, Klinsmann's MO is 60 minutes before he makes any changes. So do we see Julian Green for 30 minutes? Is he trusting the kid that much at this point? It's a friendly, but it's Mexico. It's a big stage.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had talked to Jurgen Klinsmann a while ago when all of this was brewing, and I asked him point blank. I said, look, would you, in the way that Brazil sometimes does, take one of those last roster spots and give it to a guy with an eye to the future, a guy that could come, get the experience, understand what a World Cup is at an age where it will seep in and be very beneficial 4 years down the line. And he said, I can't afford to do that. If I'm bringing somebody, they are going to have the ability, or I feel that they have the ability to contribute. And so either he wasn't telling me the truth, or that's what he believes. And I do believe that he feels that Julian Green can contribute. Now, where he contributes, obviously, you talked about the whiteboard, and that's where a lot of people see him. But being so close to the World Cup, which has caused all this talk, means that when he gets his opportunity next week, he better show something. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a lot of pressure on a young kid to do it, but you know what? You signed up for the gig. And make no mistake about it, the reason why you signed up was because of the promise of a World Cup. Otherwise, you wait until after the World Cup, you see what's going on, and then you make the change. It wasn't so he had the opportunity to go to Phoenix and play against Mexico in a friendly. I mean, it's the opportunity to play in a World Cup. And as I said before, while I can respect that, there has to be more. It can't just be about, this is my best chance to play in a World Cup. Because I believe that if you don't feel something more, and I don't know yet whether he does or not, and it has nothing to do with where you're born or how well you speak English or anything like that. It's something inside. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that feeling that the pride comes not from playing in a World Cup, but from playing in a World Cup for the United States in this case, if you don't have that, that will manifest itself either individually in your play, and then, which is probably even more problematic, within the team, and that will be horrible, and that would be a major, major problem. That's what, managing-wise, Jurgen Klinsmann has to figure out and work through with this kid, not the least of which is his actual playing. And he'll do a lot in terms of the perception by coming in and doing something, being positive. I'm not saying he's got to come in and score goals and be the best player on the field, but just be positive, because everyone's going to say, if you're going to get this opportunity and this golden ticket, you have to be not just as good, but better than what already exists, and that's going to be his challenge.
Well, if we believe that he's competing with the last couple of guys on this roster, perhaps as a late game substitute, a game changer, maybe even a left-sided guy, you want to be specific about that, whether that's his natural position or not, then really what we're saying is he's got to be better than Breck Shea.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what we're saying. Yeah. You know, and also, and you mentioned him coming in as a substitute, and I think that's where we're looking at him, barring some crazy turn of events. The ability to recognize that opportunity, to take it with both hands. And I talk about this with Breck Shea or anybody else that's in that situation. Look, he's going to turn down that bench and he's going to point to somebody at a point when they need a spark off the bench. And the ability to take players on one-on-one, the ability to use speed at a time when a team is tired, that's right up Julian Green's alley. And if he can do that and provide that spark and show that starting against Mexico and then obviously into the World Cup, then I think that all this talk about whether he deserves this or whether this is right goes away. Your ability on the field and what you do on the field is important. But as I said before, I think that what you do on the field is informed by how you look at this opportunity, in this case with the U.S.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about how well you speak English or where you're born. Is it about how well you sing the national anthem? Because I think that's something people really focus on for whatever reason. Like, did you belt out the national anthem every single time?
Absolutely. Okay. Not only that, but I did a little harmony piece at the very end, and I always did that, and I stayed, and I held the note longer than whoever was singing it at the time. That was my little ritual, and I kept my hand over my heart all the way through until I felt that it was appropriate to stop singing that note at the end of the national anthem. I think it's important. I think are you less American or less of a patriot if you don't sing the national anthem? No, but I think you're there representing your country and you're there representing yourself within a team situation. And so, I look at it. I mean, when Gianluigi Buffon sings the national anthem, I could care less. He could let 7 goals in. It is one of the most incredible and emotional things that you can see. And it has absolutely nothing to do with kicking the ball. Right. But you know that when he steps on that field after you've seen him do that regardless of what happens, You can say he's a horrible goalkeeper, you can say he's a horrible person, but one thing that you can't say is that he doesn't feel a love and a pride for his mother country in Italy.
Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, we had a recent example with the Confederations Cup last year when Brazil, going through everything that they were going through, they step on that field. I think it was the final against Spain. The players belted it out. The fans all sang the national anthem, and it became it reinforces what this international version of our game is supposed to be. It can be muddled, and sometimes we can ask some questions. But at its basic, at the basic level, it's supposed to be about representing your country, and that's not a exclusionary thing. That's just being proud of where you're from. All right.
Oh my God! If I was his agent, though, I mean, you got to manage. You got to say,
right.
Look.
Well, of course.
If it's Julian Green or whatever, you say, look, you put your hand over your heart, and here are the words to the lyrics to the national anthem. If you don't know it, and you sing like there's no tomorrow. I mean, give yourself half a chance. It is important. All these different things matter. They matter from an external perspective when you see them, but they also matter internally. Don't think for a second that people don't see it. When Josie Alto doesn't put his hand over his heart and people scream and yell, is it irritating? Yeah, it's irritating.
The element of getting, and I mentioned this earlier, Bradley, Donovan, and Dempsey all on the field together, I think is another important element of this. Whether or not they're going to be as effective without some of those other players we're going to see on the field in Brazil, the Joneses and Johnsons and Bedoyas potentially. Is up for question, but these guys, they're the core. They're the ones you think of as certainly as the leaders. You got Dempsey's the captain, Donovan's the all-time great, Bradley's the guy that runs everything from the middle. Is there something specific there? I mean, how do these guys go about? I don't know, this process in this game against Mexico. Is this the best place for them to figure it out, I guess?
Yeah, we saw the previous friendly that the U.S. played, and it didn't have the MLS guys, and so when it didn't go well, I said, well, they need the MLS guys. And next week, if it doesn't go well, they'll say, well, you need the European-based guys.
Yeah.
The reality is you need them all together, and so it's difficult sometimes to look at these games because there are some important pieces that are going to be inserted into the final equation here. Having said that, I think from an MLS perspective, there is a good, healthy competition with the quote-unquote European-based players. Mm-hmm. And this is an opportunity for these guys that are now mostly MLS-based. It's not just an opportunity for Julian Green. It's also an opportunity for these guys to come together and to play well. And that core of players that you said that are now based in MLS to get back together and get another rep together. So, yeah, it's going to be fun seeing these guys play together and how they adjust with some of the pieces out of the puzzle. But ultimately, I think they would admit, and I think we would all admit, that mix of players from both domestic players and the players playing outside of the U.S. or outside of North America are ultimately what are going to dictate whether this team is successful or not.
Do you have the game's a week away. I don't know that I'll talk to you. Do you have a score line that you would like to see? I mean, I'm not asking for a prediction. I think this is a very difficult sort of game to handicap for a lot of reasons. But, you want to build some momentum, whether the result matters or not. Do they need to win? Do they need to have a shutout to bring some confidence for the defensive guys? Do they need to score a couple goals to bring some confidence for the attack? Is it this kind of game?
Do they need to win? Well, I mean, that Mexico. When we have these U.S.-Mexico games, everyone ramps it up. ESPN, we're going to ramp it up, and it's a fun, regardless of what the realities are. This is always a huge rivalry, and so in the perception part of it, yeah, it's important that they play well and they do well against Mexico. I mean, look, Mexico is in this process of saying, you know what? We don't think about 2013. All we do is think about 2014. Right. And this is another opportunity for them and for Herrera to put that out of people's minds, because there is still that lingering thought that Mexico is the team that they saw in 2013. I don't think so. I think that actually Mexico is going to be one of those teams that has a horrible year before the World Cup and then has a very good World Cup. And to come stateside, even though they'll have plenty of fans, and to beat the U.S., which has had their number and just had an absolutely phenomenal 2013, oftentimes at Mexico's expense. That would be a nice little feather in the cap there, and something for them to take through into the summer. Losing to Mexico in this situation for the U.S. is it devastating to Jurgen Klinsmann? No, it's not that big a deal. I'm much more concerned in the tactical applications, or the back four and the relationship to the midfield. And then, the interesting thing about Julian Green, he's a curiosity right now, and we're going to have all eyes on him, see what happens with him when he gets up and starts warming up and then gets into the game.
There we go. Noted rat enthusiast Alexi Lalas, as Luke points out on Twitter. I missed that one in your bio. Rat with two T's.
Greatest band in the history of music.
There you go. Making sure people understand. We're talking about music, not little rodents. Rat the band. Alexi,
no, two T's.
Appreciate the time as always, Alexi. Thanks a lot.
All righty, see you.
All right, there you go. Alexi Lalas. Let's take a break. Got more music from Chase. When we come back, we'll close this one out. Touch on that Nations League thing from UEFA. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Tick-tock, you don't stop, stop to the hard 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 tick-tock.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Chase picking out a little Color Me Bad on a Thursday. Not a song I ever thought I'd play on Soccer Morning. I'll fully admit to that. Oh, thanks for that. Good stuff there. The lead singer of Color Me Bad, not doing so well. Go look him up. Yeah, it's not going well for that guy. 25 years after he was at the height of his powers. All right, less than 10 minutes to go in this edition of Soccer Morning on a Thursday. It's been a good one so far. Phone lines are still open, 347-756-6276. By the way, speaking of phone lines and live shows, in the NASN family, I forgot to mention this. I apologize to those guys over at Open Wide for Some Soccer. They did a live show last week. I think that was a Thursday. When was that? No, it was this week. Trevor, help me out here. When was the live show for those guys at Open Wide for Some Soccer? They did a live show. It was very cool. Happy to have them Monday. Excuse me. Yes. Now, my days are all getting mixed up in my head. Go check out their live edition. It was excellent. They had some very good callers. Pablo, Seth, and Thomas. 850, you're on the air.
Hey, it's Bennett in Tallahassee.
What's up, man?
Not much. Just wanted to track back with you on the David Beckham thing. I couldn't catch the live show on Monday and Tuesday, and you made some comments about Tallahassee. It's not really a North or South Florida.
You know what? I may have painted with a broad brush, or I may have used the wrong brush. Period. But all I was trying to do is just give the sense that that's still not David Beckham's. That's still not a place you would expect David Beckham to thrive. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. He is certainly a celebrity, and apparently everybody knew him there at the Capitol, and they all took selfies, and it was fantastic. So no harm, no foul.
No. I wasn't complaining about your comments. I think they're well placed in some ways. It's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Sure.
There are term limits that are really strict in Florida politics. So the incoming politician leadership is the most powerful people in the state, and the incoming Senate president is from Orlando.
Okay.
And we know that Orlando City's been asking for state money.
Yes.
And so that was what Beckham's visit was about.
Yes.
If you were here and you saw it, he capitalized on his celebrity, but his message was very egalitarian.
Oh, no.
We want the same type of consideration that Orlando City might get, and in an election year, that might work. South Florida isn't going to support a publicly funded stadium,
right?
But they might if Orlando is going to get the money anyway.
Yeah, and
They'll want their share.
These are state funds. I certainly tried to be as accurate as possible about that. These are state funds available to professional sports teams, not just soccer and not just it's a matter of a subsidy that is built in to sort of promote the idea of professional sports in Florida. That's what he was there for. And as I've said before, thanks for the call, Bennett. Beckham seems completely into this. He knows what he's talking about. Give him full credit and full marks for that. 928, you're on the air.
Jason, David from Prescott Valley. How you doing this morning?
Hey, David. How are you, man?
Hey, listen, your tune-in radio feed isn't working, so I'm at a minimum a day behind you.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back to the jersey discussion. Is that okay?
Absolutely, sure. We'll close out with that today.
So you've kind of, I've come to rely on you, Jason, as a reliable source of information, and you've kind of thrown my life into a bit of a conflict here. I'll give you an example. I had the 2006. It wasn't a replica jersey. It was just a T-shirt, but looking exactly like the home uniform, which I loved, by the way.
Okay.
Both the home and away ones in 2006. I wore that thing out. I mean, that thing had holes in it. I couldn't even throw it out. It was like the Jerry Seinfeld joke about,
David,
the stitches coming loose, right?
David,
Yeah.
you know that any shirt with holes, regardless of what it looks like, is no. That's a no-go fashion-wise. As I said, these are rules in the loosest sense. You're completely free to go and wear whatever you want. And if you think you look good, that's all that matters.
Well, no, that's like I look good. That's a whole other topic. But the name thing, I've never done it because what I've always wanted to do is put my last name on the shirt, but then get and I won't get into the specifics, to get a 3-digit number on the back, and they won't do that. That's the only thing that prevented me from doing it. So they have, of course, the cost. But I'm going to the Mexico-U.S. game down here in Phoenix, and I was thinking about buying a jersey, but now you got me wondering.
No. Look, David, it's a World Cup year. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to wear that jersey when you go to the game, right? When you go, I'm assuming you're going to go and enjoy some company while you watch the World Cup matches when that comes around in June. Maybe you even watch it at home, but you still have an opportunity to wear it. And there are plenty of chances to wear the jersey that don't involve, and look, there are other applications. We didn't have a chance to go into every exception to all of the rules. But, in an athletic, sporting, professional sports context, I guess, wear it out. Wear it out. I'm just saying, if there is something, I don't know, the website People of Walmart exists for a reason. And yes, wearing a jersey does not go to the level of People of Walmart, but it is among those things that a person of a certain age should be under question for doing. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, first of all, let me say that I love your show, but you're not my personal
no
fashion guidance counselor.
Ignore me
so
completely.
Don't get me wrong there.
Ignore me.
Hey, if I want to wear it, I'm going to wear it.
That's right.
But all I'm saying though is that you just got me thinking about it a little bit because I'm wondering. But also, real quickly, Jason, I think there's a huge difference between the West Coast and the East Coast in certain parts of the country when it comes to the culture of going out. What do you wear? I mean, Phoenix is so freaking casual. I mean, it's unreal. It's a huge difference even between Phoenix and LA.
Okay.
It's like a culture shock. I've lived in those two towns.
Okay.
And people in Phoenix there is not a real sort of you have to go to real snobby parts of maybe Scottsdale and some other place where you see people really dressed up. I mean, it is a really casual town.
There's a big difference, there's a big gap between. We got to go. Thanks for the call, David. I appreciate it, man. There's a big gap between wearing the jersey. Again, there are certain contexts it's probably okay. I don't have time to go through all of them. Decide that on your own. Be your own arbitrator of that. There's a big gap between wearing the jersey in a situation where you know it's probably not the best thing to wear and being dressed up like you're from Scottsdale. I'm not saying that you need, if you're 40, you should be dressed up and wearing slacks and polo shirts all the time. Although, again, thanks Nike, we get to wear these shirts because they look like polo shirts. It's no problem. This shirt, by the way, is an exception to all of the rules. It doesn't look like a jersey. It looks like a polo. Wear it out. Go play golf in it. All right, that's going to do it for us. Please hook us up with a rating and a review on iTunes. Thanks to Alexi Lawless. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Morning. And follow me on Twitter, DavisJSN. And we'll be back tomorrow, Big Friday episode. I don't know what we'll talk about, but something will happen between now and tomorrow, and we will cover it. See you later.
The days on the boulevard are lended. We used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract. And me, the